So Andy, 1-1 draw, Chelsea Spurs. Where does that leave Jose Mourinho?
I think he'll be fairly pleased with it. I think he'll be pleased with the fact that they came back so strongly in the game. I think the game was sort of typical of what Mourinho gets from his teams, where they had a setback early on. They were clearly second best in pretty much all over the field early on, but they came back very strong and lucky not to win. And I think it'll reassure him that this Chelsea team still has the hunger and the desire to actually achieve things. It will also leave him, I think, probably having to reassess his views on one matter, that's for sure. He seems to be in a minority of one, the most important one, of course, in him. But Mata certainly had a big impression in the second half, so he'll have to rethink that. From clearly, it was his policy to, for Mata not to be an automatic choice, but certainly I think he'll have second thoughts now having watched that second half.
And of course Torres looked sharp, but then he got himself sent off.
Well, that was the ironic thing, was that actually that was one of Fernando Torres' more effective performances recently. I thought we saw a couple of things in there, that we haven't seen for a long time from him, where he's actually, he's actually had that quite explosive burst past the player. He actually went past Vertonghen, who he had a scrap with all afternoon, but he actually went past with a little bit of acceleration. He looked sharp in areas, and of course he was absolutely up for this game. He was very, very feisty, which of course in the end culminated in being sent off. Probably not for the right offence, but certainly there was one or two or three incidents before that for which he could easily have got a second yellow and been sent off. But I think actually Mourinho will take encouragement from that, because what he's got to do is he's got to get Torres firing. He's got to somehow get Torres to flourish again if this Chelsea side is to be successful. He hasn't got that many striking options really, and the way they play, he needs Torres to be leading that line. He needs Torres to be, he's often going to be playing on his own, so he needs to put himself about a bit. And I actually think Mourinho will actually look back on this, and even though Torres will now miss a game from being from the second yellow card and the red card, I think he'll be encouraged by his display.
And for Spurs, the first half probably showed their title credentials, the second half not.
Yeah, well, I think what happened is I think it summed up Spurs very nicely, actually. The first half showed the promise of what is, after all, just an embryonic stage of this new Spurs era with so many new players coming in. And the second half showed that for a lot of those new players, I'm thinking of Christian Eriksen, for example, in particular, they'll have to get used to the sort of staying power you need to be successful in this Premier League, both in individual games and throughout the whole season. In this game, they clearly tired. They tired mentally, they tired physically. They were overpowered in the second half by Chelsea. In that first half, Eriksen was outstanding, Townsend was outstanding, Polino was good, but you just saw them fade in the second half, and Chelsea, with that familiar sort of physicality and power and speed, actually overwhelmed them in the second half. And I think that's a good thing for Spurs. They'll have to get used to the demands and the tempo.
And where does this leave the situation at the top of the table now? Good result for Arsenal, I suppose. Good
result for Arsenal, obviously, depending on theirs. But it does, I think maybe it does reinforce what we all hope, and what Jose Mourinho actually said in his press conference on the eve of this game. And we are all hoping this is going to be the case. It reinforces the suggestion that there will actually be now 6 teams involved in this title race. That is what we all want. We all want, spectators, media, I think even the players and the clubs themselves. How great that would be for the Premier League if we could have 6 teams actually in contention for the title, rather than the 2 or 3 or 4 at most. It's probably been 3 in the last 2 or 3 seasons. And I think you saw nothing really much between these two sides here. You're seeing good, consistent results from a lot of these teams. So I think that is what we can get from it, is that actually, there could be half a dozen actually in the second half of the season, all with their eyes on the main prize.